Good day, children. I am teacher Sulin Rodrigues. I hope all of you and your families are safe and keeping in good health. Today, I will be teaching Standard 10th History. I will be doing Chapter 2, Historiography, Indian Traditions. Before we move ahead, let us just recap what is historiography. Historiography is nothing but analyzing and studying narratives about the past after examining all the historical sources carefully and making sure that they are genuine. Now, the historiography of India is divided into three parts: ancient, medieval, and modern. We will look at how we come to know about the historiography of the ancient time, that is right from the Stone Age up to around the 8th century current era. We come to know about the life of the Stone Age man in India from the cave paintings that are seen at Bhimteka and also from folk tales or folk stories that were orally passed on from one generation to another. We come to the next stage in Indian history, that is the Indus Valley civilization or the Harappan civilization, which dates back to around 9,000 years. We come to know about this time from the artifacts and seals made of clay and terracotta. But the pictographical inscriptions on these articles cannot be decoded or deciphered. So we don't know much from these inscriptions. Then we have the Vedic age, which dates back to around 2050 right up to 600 BCE or before current era. The Vedas, the Upanishads, the Smritis, the Sutras written at that time give us a lot of information about social and religious life of the people, about the language spoken at that time, the arts pursued by people, and many other aspects of Vedic life. Also, Sangam literature gives us a lot of information about South India. We then have inscriptions on stone and pillar and caves, which give us lots of information about the Mauryan period, especially inscriptions on Buddhism by Ashoka. A lot of inscriptions and images and writings came to be inscribed on metals, on weapons, on copper plates, on coins, and even metal sculptures. From these, we come to know about the various dynasties that ruled India at that time. We come to know about their founders, how big these kingdoms were, political relations between them, political events that took place at that time, what kind of administration was carried out over there, the trade that they had with each other and with other regions, climatic conditions of the time, and many other aspects of life. One such example is the copper plate found at Sohagura in Uttar Pradesh, which suggests that instructions on how to store grain and distribute these grains used to be inscribed on metal. So something that seems so ordinary, that also used to be inscribed. It also tells us about the script that was used at that time. Also, a lot of different forms of literature in the form of inscriptions on stone and metal or writings on parchment talk about the biographies of great king and on various fields that were there very prominent at that time, like maths, astronomy, medicine, religion, economics, trade, defense, and many other topics. The travelogues of foreigners also help us to know about ancient Indian times. So we see there are so many different ways in which we come to know about ancient Indian history. We move now on to the medieval times, which were from around 800 current era right up to 1857 current era. The history of the medieval times is revealed to us through four different perspectives. That is, from the perspective of historians and scholars in the courts of Muslim rulers, the writings of foreign travelers who came to India, and the Bakars. Bakars were nothing but eulogies. A eulogy is a speech or a poem recited or written to honor a dead person. In addition, we have sculptures, weapons, miniature paintings, folk songs, poems or shairis, inscriptions on coins, historical monuments. All these also help us to get information about medieval India. For example, Amir Khusro, who was a poet, and many other scholars give us a lot of information about the Sultanate period of the 8th century current era through their writings. Also, you have the Tuzuk-e-Babri, which was an autobiography written about Babur, about the battles he fought, observations made by him when he traveled through a region, and a lot of other detailed accounts. It also tells us about the customs, economy, the flora and fauna that was there in India at around that time, that is, in the 15th century current era. But the Muslim scholars had one drawback in their writings. These Muslim scholars and historians mostly used to write about great things achieved by the kings to show their loyalty to the kings. But you have some other historians like Kalhana, who wrote Raj Tarangini, the history of Kashmir. He stated that when he wrote this, he did it only after critically examining all the sources of history. Even Zayuddin Barani, who wrote Tariq-e-Firuz Shahi, also felt that historians should make a record of both the achievements and failings of kings. Abul Fazl, one of the 9 gems of Akbar's court, also used the method of being unbiased when writing about the historical accounts of Akbar's court. So the historical works of these kind of people give a more accurate and realistic idea of those times. We also have the Bakars written by the Marathas. These Bakars give us a lot of information about Maratha history. They tell us about great men and women of Maharashtra, daring deeds done by the people, especially by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, about important historical events and battles, especially battles that became the turning point in Maratha history, They also speak about problems faced by the people like droughts and famines and how different kings solved the problems of people. Examples of these are the Sabasad Bakar written by Krishnaji Anand Sabasad, which tells us a lot about the administration of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, forts that were built by him, navy during his reign, and various other features of his lifetime. You also have the Holkaranchi Kafiyat, which gives us a lot of information about the Holkars who were Sardars serving in the Maratha Navy. It tells us about the daring deeds done by many brave soldiers of the Holkar dynasty and how the Maratha Navy became very strong because of them. You also have Bahusaibanchi Bakar and Panipatachi Bakar, which tells us about the third battle of Panipat between the Marathas and the British. These Bakars give us an account of why the Marathas lost this battle and finally how the Maratha came to an end in the 17th century. We now come to the historiography of the modern period, which begins around 1857 current era with the Indian War of Independence and continues right up to the current times. Now, modern historiography of India is divided into two sections: pre independence era and the post independence history. Pre independence history is further written from three perspectives: the colonialist, the orientalist, and the nationalist. Now, when the colonialist or the colonist wrote history, that is, many British officers and Christian missionaries, when they wrote about the history of India, their writings were very prejudiced. Their writings clearly reflected their prejudiced attitude towards India, and that they always portrayed a very negative image of India in order to justify why they had to come and rule over us. Examples of this can be seen in the writings of James Mill and Mount Stuart Elphinston, who was the governor of Bombay in 1841. Books written by Grant Duff, Colonel Todd, or even William Wilson Hunter show the same inclination of the Britishers of condemning Indian culture and history. The Orientalists who wrote about the history of India were again Europeans, but they wrote from a very different perspective. They had a lot of admiration and respect for Indian culture, ancient Indian languages, and also Indian knowledge. This can be seen in their writings. Examples of these are the works of Sir William Jones, who was the founder of the Asiatic Society in Kolkata, and Frederick Max Muller. But Edward Said, a foreign scholar who carefully studied the works of the Orientalists, revealed that behind all the praise laid an imperialistic interest, that these people wanted India's knowledge for the progress of their own nation. We now move on to the nationalists. Who are these nationalists? Now, there were many Indian scholars who had received education in the European run educational institutions. Like you have Vishnu Shastri Chiplunkar, Mahadev Govind Ranade, Ramkrishna Gopal Bhandarkar, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, very popularly known as Veer Savarkar, Rajendra Lal Mishra, and many other such scholars. When they wrote books and articles, they did it with an inclination to restore pride in Indian culture, Indian traditions, and knowledge and customs. They wrote about the progress and the biographies of people and the geography of different regions. Like Vishwanath Kashinath Rajavde wrote in Marathi on many subjects which helped to throw light on a lot of different aspects of life in the pre-independence era. The books written by Veer Savarkar on the Indian War of Independence of 1857 also give a lot of information about political conditions, social conditions of people at that time, how this war paved the way for India's fight for independence. And there were also many other national leaders who wrote many articles and newspapers, which also helped in giving information about whatever was happening in different regions of India. This is how we come to know about the pre independence time. The most important year in Indian history is the year 1947, when India won her independence. It marks the beginning of post independence historiography, when India started modernizing herself and started making progress on all fronts, whether it was agriculture, industries, politics, education, research, every other area. It is again written from three perspectives or 3 points of view, that is, the Marxist, the subaltern, and the feminist perspective. Now, there were many Marxists, like you have Comrade Shripad Amrut Denge, Ram Sharan Sharma, Comrade Sharad Patil, and many other such people. When they wrote history, they wrote it from the point of view of how any event had an impact on the different economic classes that were there in India at that time. Like if a Marxist had to write about the COVID-19 pandemic, he would probably refer to the plight of the migrant workers or the impact of this pandemic on small businesses and on the working class. He would look at this event from the point of view of how it affects economic life. It was the same even then. Any event was noted on the basis of how it affected the economic life of people of different sections in society. We move on to the subaltern outlook towards historiography. Now, when these historians wrote about India after independence, they did it from the point of view of the subaltern, that is, the others, or those people who are outside mainstream society or who are not considered part of society, like the Dalits, Shudras, Ati Shudras. The chief among the scholars who wrote from this point of view were Mahatma Jyotirao Phule and Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, and even Ranjit Guha. Their writings point out to the exploitation of the subaltern section of society, and also about how these people also were very important and played a very important role in society by contributing at different times to the development of society. We come to a very, very important section of society, that is the women folk. When women wrote about the history of India, especially in the post independence times, They did it with a view of showing the important role played by women in the progress of India. There were so many women who, in the post independence times, wrote on different fields from the women or the female perspective. Like you had Tarabai Shinde or Meera Kausambi or Dr. Sharmila Rege. All their works concentrate on talking about the occupations carried out by women, the kind of treatment given to them at their workplaces, gender equality, the life of Dalit women, also a lot of political reforms that were being introduced for women. They also wanted to inspire other women by writing about the lives of great women like Pandita Ramabai, the first lady doctor of India. So you also have history written from the feminist perspective. Now, besides all these ways in which history was written, you also had some people who wrote history not from any particular ideological perspective. They just generally express their views and opinions about events, about things that were occurring around them. Their point of view and their perspective also helps in throwing light about various things that were happening. All these works help to throw light on Indian history, whether it is in the form of inscriptions, paintings, sculptures, writings by different sections of society on different times from different perspectives. Every single one of them helps us to form an opinion of what India was like at the different times, ancient, medieval, modern times. So, what we have seen in this chapter is the different perspectives and the different ways in which the history of India was written. With this, we come to an end with this lesson. For your assignment, you will answer question 1A on page 13, question 1B on page 14, and question 5A and B, which are concept pictures, on page 14 of your textbook. That's all. Have a nice day.